The lights just went out. Your phone's dead. The kids are asking when dinner's ready. And you realize you spent $800 on a generator you don't know how to use while ignoring the $12 solution sitting at Walmart right now. This is the reality most families face. They think survival is about expensive gear, tactical backpacks, and freeze-dried meals that cost more than a car payment. Wrong, dead wrong. Because when disaster strikes, when the grid fails, when supply chains collapse, it's not the family with the most expensive equipment that survives. It's the family that knows how to turn everyday items into life-saving tools. And today I'm going to show you 10 budget survival hacks that cost less than a pizza delivery, but could mean the difference between your family thriving or barely making it through the first 72 hours. These aren't theory. These aren't prepper fantasies. These are proven field-tested solutions that work when everything else fails. And number 7? That's the one even seasoned preppers overlook until it's too late. Let's get real about survival. Most people prepare backwards. They spend hundreds on gadgets they'll never use while ignoring the basics that actually keep you alive. A $300 water filter that needs replacement cartridges you can't get during a crisis. A tactical flashlight that dies after 6 hours. Emergency food buckets filled with powdered nonsense your kids won't eat. Meanwhile, the smart preppers, the ones who actually survive, they're stacking simple, cheap solutions that work under pressure. And here's what makes me furious. The survival industry doesn't want you to know this. They can't make money off dollar store items and basic chemistry. So instead, they sell you fear wrapped in expensive packaging. But survival isn't about the gear. It's about the knowledge. And every hack on this list proves that the best solutions are often the cheapest ones. You just need to know what to look for and how to use it. So if you're tired of burning money on overpriced survival gear that collects dust in your garage, pay attention. Because these 10 hacks could save your family's life without emptying your bank account. Hack number 1. The $3 water backup most preppers ignore. Water is life. You know this. Everyone knows this. But here's what most people get wrong. They think they need a $200 Berkey filter or those fancy life straw systems to have clean drinking water during a crisis. And sure, those work great until the replacement filters run out or the system breaks. Then what? You're standing there with a useless piece of plastic while your family dehydrates. Let me show you what actually works. 2-liter soda bottles and unscented bleach. That's it. 2 items you can grab at any grocery store for under $5 total. Here's the brutal math. The average person needs 2 liters of water per day to survive. That's 1 bottle. For a family of 4, that's 8 liters daily. During a week-long blackout, you need 56 liters minimum. Buying bottled water at the store costs you $30 to $40 for that amount. And when disaster hits, those shelves empty in hours. But if you've saved 10 empty 2-liter bottles and filled them with tap water before the crisis, you've got 20 liters already. Add 8 drops of unscented household bleach per gallon, shake it up, wait 30 minutes, and you've got water that's safe to drink for months. The bleach kills bacteria, viruses, and parasites. It's the same chemical water treatment plants use, just in concentrated form, and it costs pennies. But here's where people mess up. They think any bleach works. Wrong. Scented bleach, bleach with additives, splashless formulas, those will poison you. You need plain unscented sodium hypochlorite at 6% concentration. Read the label. 8 drops per gallon. No more, no less. Too much and you're drinking chlorine. Too little and you're gambling with Giardia or E. coli. And storage matters. Keep those filled bottles in a cool, dark place. Sunlight degrades plastic and water quality. A basement, a closet, under the bed, anywhere away from heat and light. This system isn't glamorous. It won't impress your tactical gear friends. But when the pipes run dry and your neighbor's expensive filter is useless, you'll have clean water for your family. And in survival, boring solutions that work beat flashy gear that fails every single time. Most preppers waste hundreds on filtration systems and never think about the simplest backup. Don't be most preppers. Now water keeps you alive, but without heat, you're fighting a losing battle against hypothermia. And that brings us to hack number 2, the dollar store fire starter that beats $50 gear. Fire is survival. It purifies water. It cooks food. It keeps you warm when the temperature drops and the power's been out for days. But here's the problem. Most people either don't know how to start a fire under pressure, or they rely on gear that fails when it matters most. Matches get wet. Lighters run out of fuel. And those fancy ferrocerium rods everyone raves about? Sure, they spark, but sparks don't mean fire. You need tinder that catches fast and burns long enough to ignite kindling. And that's where most people fail. They're fumbling in the cold, trying to light damp leaves with a tiny spark while their kids are shivering. Let me show you what actually works. Cotton balls and petroleum jelly. That's it. One bag of cotton balls costs $1. One jar of Vaseline costs $3. Together, they create the most reliable fire starter you can make. Here's how it works. Take a cotton ball, coat it in petroleum jelly until it's saturated but not dripping, and store a handful in a small waterproof container like an old pill bottle or Ziploc bag. When you need fire, pull one out, fluff it up to expose the cotton fibers, and light it with a match, lighter, or even a spark from that ferrocerium rod. It ignites instantly and burns for 3 to 5 minutes. That's enough time to get kindling going even in wet conditions. Why does this work so well? The cotton provides surface area and structure. The petroleum jelly is pure hydrocarbons. It burns hot and slow. Together, they're basically homemade napalm in a safe, controlled form. And unlike store-bought fire starters that cost $2 each, you can make 50 of these for under $5. But here's the controversial part. This beats almost every commercial fire starter on the market. Those compressed sawdust cubes, they crumble and go out in wind. Magnesium shavings? Good luck scraping enough in the rain. Dryer lint in cardboard tubes? Cute, but they don't burn long enough. Cotton and Vaseline. Waterproof, windproof, and foolproof. I've used these in freezing rain, high wind, and after sitting in a pack for 2 years. They work every time. And the best part? You can teach your kids how to make them. Turn it into a family prep session. Make 50 in an hour. Store them in your car, your bug-out bag, your camping gear, your emergency kit at home. Because when the power's out and the temperature's dropping, starting a fire isn't optional, it's survival. And this $3 hack gives you 50 chances to get it right. Now let's talk about something people completely overlook until it's too late. Batteries. Hack number 3. The grocery aisle battery hack nobody talks about. When the power goes out, batteries become currency. Flashlights, radios, headlamps, everything runs on batteries. And here's the cruel reality. You'll burn through them faster than you think. A cheap flashlight can drain 4 AA batteries in 6 hours. A decent radio might last 12 hours on 2 Ds. When you're rationing light and information during a blackout, battery life becomes everything. But most people don't stockpile enough. Or worse, they buy the wrong sizes. You grab a flashlight that needs C batteries, but all you've got are AAs. Now that flashlight is a paperweight, unless you know this hack. AA batteries plus aluminum foil equals a replacement for C or D batteries. Sounds crazy, right? But it works. Here's the science. Batteries are just containers for stored energy with a positive and negative terminal. The size difference between AA, C, and D batteries? That's just casing. The voltage is the same, 1.5 volts. The only difference is capacity. Bigger batteries hold more charge and last longer. But in an emergency, lasting a few hours is better than having no light at all. Here's how you do it. Take an AA battery. Crumple up a small piece of aluminum foil into a ball and place it on the negative end, the flat side. This extends the length so the AA fits snugly in a device designed for a C or D battery. The foil conducts electricity and completes the circuit. Boom. Your AA is now doing the job of a bigger battery. It won't last as long, obviously, but it works in a pinch. I've powered a lantern for 4 hours this way. I've kept a radio running during a storm. And when you're in the dark with no other options, 4 hours of light is everything. Now, let's be real. This isn't a long-term solution. A's have less capacity than D's. You'll replace them more often. And if you do this wrong, if the foil shifts or doesn't make solid contact, the device won't work. But the point is this. You don't need to stockpile every battery size known to man. Buy a bulk pack of AAs, keep a roll of aluminum foil handy, and you've just made your battery supply infinitely more flexible. And here's the kicker. A 50-pack of AA batteries at Costco costs around $15. That's 30 cents per battery. Compare that to D batteries at $2 each, and you're saving a fortune while staying prepared. Most preppers blow their budget on expensive rechargeable systems or hoard batteries they'll never use. Smart preppers buy cheap, adapt, and keep their gear running when everyone else is sitting in the dark. And speaking of staying functional when systems fail, let's talk about shelter, because your home might not be an option. Hack number 4. The $8 shelter solution hiding in your garage. When people think survival shelter, they picture expensive tactical tents, bivy sacks, or those emergency reflective tubes that cost $40 and rip the first time you use them. But real shelter doesn't need to be complicated or expensive. It just needs to keep you dry, block wind, and retain body heat. And you can do all of that with a tarp, some paracord, and basic knowledge. A decent tarp costs $8 to $12 at any hardware store. Paracord runs about $6 for 50 feet. That's under $20 total for a shelter system that can house your entire family in an emergency. But here's what most people don't understand. A tarp isn't just a tarp. It's a Swiss Army knife of survival. You can configure it a dozen different ways depending on your situation. Need a lean-to to block wind and rain? Tie two corners to trees, stake the bottom, and you've got instant coverage. Need a full tent? Fold it into an A-frame, secure the ridgeline, stake the edges. Need to collect rainwater? Angle it into a funnel. Need ground insulation? Layer it under your sleeping area. The versatility is insane, and yet most people walk right past tarps because they don't look cool. They want the tactical gear with molly straps and camo patterns. Meanwhile, the guy with an $8 tarp from Home Depot is staying warm and dry while Mr. Tactical is fumbling with tent poles in the rain. Here's the real test. Can you set up your shelter in under 5 minutes in the dark while stressed? Because that's the reality of survival. You're not pitching camp on a sunny afternoon. You're scrambling to get your family out of the elements after something went wrong. A tarp with pre-tied loops and a basic ridgeline setup can go up in 3 minutes. Even kids can help. Compare that to a multi-piece tent that requires instructions you don't have and stakes you lost. And let's talk about durability. A quality tarp can last years if you treat it right. Store it dry, keep it out of direct sunlight when not in use, and it'll outlast most tents. I've had the same 10-foot by 12-foot tarp for 6 years. It's been through storms, snow, and getting dragged through the woods. Still works perfectly. Tarps don't have zippers that break or seams that leak. They're just sheets of waterproof material. Simple, effective, cheap. But the real power of this hack is psychological. Knowing you can throw up a shelter in minutes anywhere gives you options. If your home becomes unsafe, if you need to evacuate, if you're stranded, you're not helpless. You've got a roof over your head that costs less than a pizza. And when your neighbors are huddled in their cars or begging for space in an overcrowded shelter, you'll have your own dry space with your family safe. That's the difference between surviving and suffering. And it starts with an $8 tarp you probably already own. Now, shelter keeps you dry. But when someone in your family gets sick during a crisis, cheap gear won't help. You need to know how to treat them with what you have. Hack number 5, the kitchen staple that replaces first aid kits. Let's talk about something that kills more people in disasters than you'd think. Dehydration from diarrhea. Sounds unglamorous, right? But here's the brutal truth. When sanitation systems fail, when water gets contaminated, when stress wrecks your gut, diarrhea hits hard. And it doesn't just make you uncomfortable, it kills. Especially kids and elderly people. Your body loses fluids and electrolytes faster than you can replace them with plain water. And once dehydration sets in, your organs start shutting down. Most people think they need expensive oral rehydration salts from a pharmacy or a fancy first aid kit with electrolyte packets. But here's what the World Health Organization has known for decades. You can make life-saving rehydration solution with 3 things you already have in your kitchen: salt, sugar, and clean water. That's it. Here's the formula. 1 liter of clean water, 6 teaspoons of sugar, half a teaspoon of salt. Mix it until dissolved. That's oral rehydration solution. It replaces the fluids and electrolytes your body is losing and stops dehydration before it becomes deadly. This formula has saved millions of lives in developing countries during cholera outbreaks and natural disasters. And it costs pennies to make, but people ignore it because it's too simple. They want the branded packets with the medical-sounding names. Meanwhile, this kitchen hack does the exact same thing for almost free. And here's why this matters in survival. During a crisis, pharmacies get looted or closed. Supply chains break down. You can't just run to CVS for Pedialyte, but salt and sugar, you've already got them. And if you're smart, you've stockpiled extra in your pantry because they last forever and cost next to nothing. Let me paint you a picture. It's day 4 of a blackout. The water's been off for 2 days. Your kid drank from a sketchy source and now has severe diarrhea. They're getting weaker by the hour. You don't have a car to get to a hospital, even if the hospital's still functioning. What do? You make this solution. You give them small sips every few minutes, and you watch them stabilize because their body is getting what it needs to recover. That's the difference between panic and control, between a medical emergency and a manageable situation, and all it cost you was 5 cents worth of salt and sugar. But here's the critical part. This only works with clean water. If your water's contaminated, you're just making the problem worse. That's why hack number 1, the bleach purification, ties directly into this. You purify the water first, then you make the solution. This is systems thinking. Every hack builds on the others. Now you've got water, fire, batteries, shelter, and medical knowledge. But when the sun goes down and you're trying to navigate a dark house or signal for help, you need light that doesn't quit. Hack number 6, the communication backup when phones die. When disaster strikes, communication collapses fast. Cell towers go down, power dies. Your smartphone becomes a useless brick. And suddenly, you realize how dependent you've been on technology you can't control. Most preppers buy expensive two-way radios, satellite phones, or ham radio setups that cost hundreds or thousands of dollars. But here's what they forget. In a real crisis, especially in the first 72 hours, your biggest communication need isn't talking to someone 50 miles away. It's signaling for help when you're trapped, lost, or injured. And for that, you need something that works without batteries, doesn't require training, and costs almost nothing. An emergency whistle. Sounds too simple, right? But let's break down why this $3 piece of plastic can save your life when everything else fails. A human shout carries maybe 100 yards in open terrain, less in forests or urban environments. A quality emergency whistle can be heard up to a mile away. That's over 15 times the range, and you can blow it for hours without losing your voice. During search and rescue operations, sound is one of the primary ways teams locate survivors. But they're not listening for screams. They're listening for consistent, sharp, high-pitched signals. 3 short blasts, pause, 3 short blasts. That's the universal distress signal. But most people don't carry a whistle. They think their phone's flashlight or their voice is enough. Then they're pinned under debris after an earthquake, or lost in the woods after dark, or separated from their family in a chaotic evacuation. And screaming doesn't work. Your throat gives out. Panic sets in. Meanwhile, the person with a whistle attached to their backpack is calmly sending out signals that cut through noise, distance, and chaos. Here's another scenario nobody thinks about. You're home during a break-in or a violent situation. Screaming might escalate things, but a few sharp whistle blasts? That's an alarm. It disorients attackers, alerts neighbors, and signals that something's wrong without you having to speak. I keep whistles in 3 places. 1 on my keychain, 1 in my car's glove box, 1 in my bug-out bag. Total cost, under $10. And I've taught my kids how to use them. 3 blasts means emergency. Keep blowing until someone responds. It's simple enough for a 5-year-old to remember and execute under stress. Compare that to trying to teach a kid how to operate a radio or use Morse code. Now, let's pair this with something that actually helps you see in the dark without burning through batteries in 6 hours. Hack number 7, the lighting solution that costs 50 cents. Candles. Yes, candles. Before you roll your eyes, let me show you why this old-school solution destroys modern LED lanterns in long-term survival scenarios. A decent LED lantern costs $20 to $40 and runs on batteries. In continuous use, it'll drain 4D batteries in about 12 hours. If you're dealing with a week-long blackout, that's 56 hours of darkness. You'll need 20D batteries. At $2 each, that's $40 just to power 1 lantern for 1 week. Now let's look at candles. A pack of 10 emergency candles costs $5 at Walmart. Each candle burns for 4 to 6 hours. That's 40 to 60 hours of light for $5. And you don't need batteries. You don't need to recharge anything. You light it and it works until it's gone. But here's where it gets interesting. Candles also produce heat. Not a lot, but in a cold room, every bit counts. 1 candle raises the temperature in a small enclosed space by several degrees. Combine that with a simple heater setup, a terracotta pot inverted over a candle, and you've got a radiant heater that can warm a bedroom enough to keep hypothermia at bay. This isn't theory. People survive winters in freezing climates using candle heaters. The clay pot absorbs heat and radiates it outward. It's basic thermodynamics, and it costs less than $10 to set up. But let's talk about safety, because this is where people panic. Yes, candles are open flames. Yes, they're a fire hazard if used carelessly. But so is every other heat source. Propane heaters can leak. Kerosene heaters produce carbon monoxide. Even battery-powered heaters can malfunction. The difference is knowledge. If you know how to use candles safely, never leave them unattended. Keep them away from flammable materials. Use stable holders. They're one of the most reliable light and heat sources you can have. And here's the psychological edge. Candlelight is calming. In a crisis, when stress is high and fear is constant, the warm glow of a candle creates a sense of normalcy. It's primal. Humans have gathered around fire for thousands of years. That flicker tells your brain you're safe, even when the world outside isn't. Compare that to the harsh white glare of an LED that screams emergency and drains your batteries. I keep a box of 50 candles in my storage closet. Total cost, $25. That's 200 to 300 hours of light and heat. Show me an LED system that competes with that for the same price. You can't. Because the survival industry doesn't want you thinking about candles. They want you buying rechargeable lanterns and solar panels and battery banks, all of which fail when components break or supplies run out. Candles just work. Now, you've got light, But what about keeping food from rotting when the fridge dies? Hack number 8, the food preservation trick your grandma knew. Let's talk about something most modern families have completely forgotten. Food preservation without electricity. Your refrigerator goes down. Your freezer starts thawing. You've got 72 hours, maybe less, before everything spoils. And unless you eat it all immediately, which isn't possible, you're watching hundreds of dollars of food turn into garbage. But here's what your grandparents knew that you don't. Salt is a preservative. Not just a seasoning, a preservation powerhouse that's kept food edible for thousands of years. Before refrigeration existed, salt curing was how humanity survived winters, famines, and long journeys. And it still works today. Here's the basic method. Take meat, fish, or even vegetables. Pack them in coarse salt. The salt draws out moisture through osmosis, and without moisture, bacteria can't grow. Seal it in an airtight container, and that food lasts weeks or even months at room temperature. I'm not talking about light salting. I'm talking about fully coating the food in salt until it's buried. This is aggressive preservation, and yes, it makes the food salty. But when you're hungry and your family needs protein, you'll soak that meat in water to remove excess salt and cook it. And it'll taste like survival, not gourmet, but it'll keep you alive. Here's the math. A 5-pound bag of coarse salt costs $3. That's enough to preserve 10 to 15 pounds of meat. Compare that to a freeze dryer that costs $3,000, or even a dehydrator that runs on electricity you don't have during a blackout. Salt is the most cost-effective preservation method that exists, and it works on more than just meat. Vegetables can be brined. Eggs can be preserved in lime water or salt. Even butter can be salted and stored for months. But most people have no idea, because we've outsourced food preservation to refrigerators and grocery stores. We've lost the knowledge, and when the power goes out, that ignorance costs you. Here's a real scenario. You just hunted or bartered for fresh meat during a long-term crisis. It's summer, no power, no fridge. You have 2 choices. Eat it all in the next 24 hours or preserve it. If you know the salt method, you've just secured protein for weeks. If you don't, you're back to square one, hungry and desperate. And let's talk about other staples. Rice, beans, flour. These already last a long time, but add salt to your storage containers. It absorbs moisture and keeps pests away. It's a double-duty preservation hack. Salt isn't just food, it's a survival tool. Stock up now while it's cheap. A year's supply costs less than $20. And when food preservation becomes critical, you'll be the one eating while others are starving. But preserved food doesn't matter if waste and disease take you out first. Hack number 9, the sanitation hack that prevents disease. This is the hack nobody wants to talk about. It's gross. It's uncomfortable, but it's absolutely critical. When the sewer system fails, when the toilets stop flushing, when trash pickup disappears, sanitation becomes your number 1 killer. Not starvation, not dehydration, disease from human waste. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid. These are the invisible killers that wipe out more people in disaster zones than violence or starvation combined. And most preppers completely ignore this until they're dealing with it in real time. So let's fix that ignorance right now. You need a backup sanitation system. And it doesn't require fancy composting toilets or expensive RV setups. You need a 5-gallon bucket, heavy-duty trash bags, and either sawdust, sand, or kitty litter. That's it. Total cost under $15. Here's how it works. Line the bucket with the trash bag. After each use, cover waste with a layer of sawdust or litter. This absorbs moisture, reduces smell, and starts breaking down waste. When the bag is half full, tie it off, seal it in a second bag, and store it away from your living area until you can dispose of it safely. Is this glamorous? No, but it works. And it keeps disease from spreading through your home or neighborhood. Because here's the brutal reality. When toilets don't flush, people panic. They dump waste in yards, alleys, rivers. Contamination spreads. Water sources get poisoned. Flies multiply. And within weeks, you've got outbreaks that kill faster than any other disaster. But the family with a functioning sanitation system, they stay healthy, they stay strong, and they outlast the ones who ignored this basic necessity. Now let's talk about disposal. You can't just leave bags of waste sitting around forever. If you're in a rural area, you dig a deep pit away from water sources and bury it. If you're urban, you follow local emergency protocols or designated disposal sites that authorities set up during prolonged crises. The key is having a plan before you need it. And here's another layer most people miss. Handhygiene. Without running water, how do you keep hands clean after dealing with waste? You need hand sanitizer, soap, or even just a diluted bleach solution in a spray bottle. 1 part bleach to 9 parts water. Spray your hands, rub them together, let them air dry. It's not perfect, but it kills most pathogens. Sanitation isn't sexy. It's not tactical. But it's the difference between your family surviving a long-term crisis or getting wiped out by preventable disease. And it costs less than a takeout meal to prepare for. Now you've got 9 hacks that cover water, fire, power, shelter, medicine, communication, light, food, and sanitation. But there's one final hack that ties all of this together. And it's the one most people never think about until they're in the middle of chaos, trying to remember what to do next. Hack number 10, the mental survival tool that costs zero. Survival isn't just physical, it's mental. And when disaster hits, when power's out, when supplies are low, when fear is high, your brain becomes either your greatest asset or your worst enemy. Panic kills. It makes you freeze when you should move. It makes you act when you should wait. It burns through your energy and destroys your decision-making. And all the gear in the world won't save you if your mind collapses under pressure. So here's the hack. Printed checklists and offline maps. $0 if you've got a printer. Maybe $5 if you need to print at a library. But the value? Incalculable. Let me explain why. Your brain under stress doesn't work the way it does right now while you're watching this video. Adrenaline floods your system. Your memory gets foggy. Simple tasks feel impossible. You forget steps. You second-guess yourself. This is normal human biology. But it's also deadly in survival situations. A printed checklist bypasses all of that. You don't have to remember the water purification ratio. It's written down. You don't have to recall the oral rehydration formula. It's on the page. You don't have to figure out which direction to evacuate. Your map shows you. This is cognitive offloading. You're taking the burden off your stressed brain and putting it on paper that doesn't panic. Here's what you need to print right now. Water purification instructions, fire starting steps, first aid basics, emergency contact numbers, evacuation routes from your home and neighborhood, local shelter locations, food storage guidelines, sanitation procedures. Print them. Laminate them if you can. Store them in a binder in your emergency kit, in your car, in a waterproof bag in your bug-out pack. And when crisis hits, you pull out that binder and follow the steps. No guessing, no panic, just action. I've got 3 copies. 1 at home, 1 in my vehicle, 1 in my bug-out bag. And I've walked my family through them during practice drills. Because knowing the information exists isn't enough. You have to familiarize yourself with it before you need it. Now let's talk about maps. When GPS dies, when your phone's dead, when cell towers are down, how do you navigate? Most people can't even drive to the next town without Google Maps. But in a crisis, that dependence becomes a death sentence. Print maps of your local area, your county, your state. Mark water sources. Mark potential shelter locations. Mark alternate routes out of your city. Mark friends or family you can reach on foot. This isn't paranoia. This is preparation. And it costs nothing but ink and paper. But here's the real power of this hack. Psychological stability. When everything's falling apart, having a system, having a plan written down, having something to reference, it keeps you calm. It gives you control when the world feels out of control. And that calm spreads to your family. Your kids see you checking the list, following the steps, staying focused. They don't panic because you're not panicking. That's leadership and survival. And it starts with printed information you created before the crisis hit. This is the hack that makes all the other hacks work. Because tools are useless if you forget how to use them. Knowledge is worthless if you can't access it under pressure. But a simple printed checklist, that's survival insurance that never expires. So here's where we are. 10 hacks. Total cost, under $100. Water purification with bleach and bottles. Fire starters with cotton and Vaseline. Battery adapters with foil. Shelter with a tarp. Rehydration solution with salt and sugar. Emergency whistles for communication. Candles for light and heat. Salt for food preservation. Bucket sanitation systems. And printed checklists for mental clarity. Each one costs almost nothing. Each one solves a critical survival need. And together, they form a system that keeps your family alive when everything else fails. But here's the truth most people won't accept. Having this knowledge changes nothing if you don't act on it. You can watch this video, nod along, think it's interesting, and then do absolutely nothing. And when disaster strikes, you'll be just as unprepared as everyone else. Or you can take action this weekend. Pick one hack, just one. Buy the supplies, test it. Make those fire starters with your kids. Fill some bottles and purify the water. Set up the tarp in your backyard. Print those checklists. Do something. Because survival isn't about knowing, it's about doing. And the families that survive aren't the ones with the most expensive gear. They're the ones who practiced the basics until they became second nature. So here's my challenge to you. Which hack are you testing first? Water purification? Fire starting? Sanitation setup? Drop it in the comments below. And don't just list it. Tell me why. Tell me which scenario you're preparing for, which fear you're addressing. Because your answer might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you've got a budget hack we didn't cover, share it. The best answers get pinned. The best ideas save lives. And that's what this is really about. Not hoarding information. Not gatekeeping survival knowledge. But building a community of people who refuse to be helpless when the system fails. Hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications. You don't want to miss anything. And if this video helped you, share it. Send it to your family, your friends, the people you care about. Because when disaster strikes, and it will, the people who prepared will be the ones still standing. Stay smart, stay ready, and remember, survival isn't about spending big. It's about thinking clearly when everyone else is panicking.